Hi friends, welcome to Krako's VRC video series. Every week we'll be bringing you 3 important tests for VRC, important questions that you must solve regularly so that you can ace VRC section. VRC section is one of those sections where consistent practice is extremely important. You see the gains after a few months. There is no immediate improvement in VRC. So in such cases, you have to put in efforts regularly for months on end before you see any improvement. With that thought in mind, what we have decided is that we will give you regular tests, 3 a week, which you can solve along with us. We'll also give you a PDF of the question so you can actually try attempting the set by yourself and then solve it along with us. So look at the PDF, download it, try to solve the RC or the VA questions, then see the video. Do this consistently. These are only 3 tests a week, so it is extremely doable. But do this consistently and slowly over time you will see yourself improving. So I hope to see you come in every single week and solve these 3 tests. If you need more VRC practice tests, just search for Krako VRC sets and you will get a lot more tests like these. Keep solving, keep practicing and keep getting better. I hope to see all of you completely crack the VRC section in CAT 2026.
Hi friends, welcome to Krako's video series. I'm Saili Kale. In this particular video, we have a passage which is about how the European colonizers viewed India, especially India's history and culture, and how their own biases led to the formulation of the image of India in the Western world. So let's take a look at the passage. We'll go paragraph by paragraph and then take a look at the questions. Interpretations of the Indian past were inevitably influenced by colonial concerns and interests, and also by prevalent European ideas about history, civilization, and Orient. Orientalist scholars studied the languages and the text with selected Indian scholars, but made little attempt to understand the worldview of those who were teaching them. The readings, therefore, are something of a disjuncture from the traditional ways of looking at the Indian past. So basically, the way European or basically how the Western world looked at the Indian past, it was influenced by their own beliefs, their own colonial concerns, their own worldview, their own ways of looking at things, their own civilizational views. So basically, they were not able to look at the Indian past objectively. They studied with Indian scholars, but they did not understand the worldview of the scholars they were working with. So essentially, they did not understand the Indian worldview. Instead, their view of Indian past was heavily influenced by their own biases, their own frame of mind, their own beliefs as such. So I'm putting European. So European interpretation of Indian past influenced by colonial concerns, biases, their own worldview. They essentially did not understand or accept the worldview of the place they were actually studying. So they did not have a good understanding. So there was basically their way of looking at India's past was very different, or there was a disjuncture between what was truly India's past versus how they viewed it as such. So now let's take a look at the next paragraph. Orientalism, which we can understand broadly as Western perceptions of the Orient, fueled the fantasy and the freedom sought by European Romanticism, particularly in its opposition to the more disciplined Neoclassicism. The cultures of Asia were seen as bringing a new romantic paradigm. Another Renaissance was anticipated through an acquaintance with the Orient, and this, it was thought, would be different from the earlier Greek Renaissance. It was believed that this Oriental Renaissance would liberate European thought and literature from the increasing focus on discipline and rationality that had followed from the earlier Enlightenment. The Romantic poets, Wordsworth and Coleridge, were apprehensive of the changes introduced by industrialization and turned to nature and to fantasies of the Orient. So there was also an innate need for this Orientalism essentially. So basically Orientalism is the way the West viewed the East as such. It was the Western fantasy of the East. And why did they have this fantasy of the East? Because they had their own concerns about the way their society was post the Greek Renaissance. After the Greek Renaissance, there was like a lot of discipline, a focus on rationality, and a lot of romantic thinkers like the Romantic poets wanted a more liberating environment, a more liberal environment, and they hoped that this would come about with a Oriental Renaissance. So basically the fantasy of the Orient also came about because of a need for there was a psychological need for a liberating force, and they hoped to see that in the form of the Orient, because they had their own preconceptions about the Orient as such. So Orientalism supported by Western fantasies of an Oriental Renaissance. They were hoping for a liberation or liberal space for Romanticism. Now let's take a look at the next paragraph. However, this enthusiasm gradually changed to conform with the emphasis later in the 19th century on the innate superiority of the European civilization. Oriental civilizations were now seen as having once been great but currently in decline. The various phases of Orientalism tended to mold European understanding of the Indian past into a particular pattern. There was an attempt to formulate Indian culture as uniform, such formulations being derived from texts that were given priority. The so-called discovery of India was largely through selected literature in Sanskrit. This interpretation tended to emphasize non-historical aspects of Indian culture, for example, the idea of an unchanging continuity of society and religion over 3000 years. And it was believed that the Indian pattern of life was so concerned with metaphysics and the subtleties of religious belief that little attention was given to the more tangible aspects. Now, essentially, this hope that they held out for an Oriental Renaissance essentially faded out, and it was essentially replaced by a different Oriental belief, that of the European superiority over the Eastern cultures, over Eastern civilizations. So they basically believed that these Oriental cultures were once great, but now they were in decline, and they had these kind of generalized view of how it was actually even in the past. So India is a complex, even its past used to be complex and nuanced. There would be different aspects to it, but the Europeans wanted to believe a very simplified, generalized view of it, that okay, people were very were too religious and too beliefs too preoccupied with metaphysics to actually be focused in the real aspects of life, in the tangible aspects of life, which is not clearly correct, right? In reality, people will be worried about their real tangible aspects of life. It's not just like about spirituality or spiritualism as such. But when outsiders view India, they basically kind of had this generalized view of India, where they adopted this view of how Indians used to be in the past as such, and they essentially kind of believed that it was like an unchanging society. Few selected literatures were given prominence. Anything which did not agree with that particular worldview would be shunted out. So essentially they had a simplified, generalized view which did not at all match up with the actual Indian past as such. So essentially the romantic view gave way to a view of culture in decline, a simplified view of India's past was adopted. Okay. German Romanticism endorsed this image of India, and it became the mystic land for many Europeans, where even the most ordinary actions were imbued with a complex symbolism. This was the genesis of the idea of the spiritual East, and also incidentally the refuge of European intellectuals seeking to distance themselves from the changing patterns of their own societies. A dichotomy in values was maintained, Indian values being described as spiritual and European values as materialistic, with little attempt to juxtapose these values with the reality of the Indian society. This theme has been even more firmly endorsed by a section of Indian opinion during the last 100 years. So essentially what happened was that the German Romanticism essentially adopted this view that Indians were very concerned about the metaphysics and religion than actual life, tangible aspects of life, and essentially in their mind they associated India with spiritualism, and with the Western cultures with materialism. And in a way, it was an escape as such. They wanted to escape their own society's problems, the way they felt their society was changing. And because they wanted to escape that, they built this fantasy about how the Indian society is. And in their fantasy, Indian society is super spiritualistic. Every action is imbued with like these complex meanings and all, which is not true as such. It did not match up with what actually India was. It was their escapist fantasy as such. So basically, a dichotomy was created, an artificial dichotomy was created, where they felt that okay, Western world is materialistic but India is spiritual, and this was something that also that India is spiritual as compared to the Western world actually continued to be endorsed by Indian opinion even in the last 100 years. So the Indian intelligentsia, or the people who made opinion in India, also kind of adopted that framework. This framework was a creation of European fantasy, but it was adopted by Indians also, that India is in fact more spiritual than the West. So a dichotomy of Indian spiritualism versus Western materialism created. It continues to influence Indian thought today over the last 100 years. Indian opinion influences Indian opinion during last 100 years. It was a consolation to the Indian intelligentsia for its perceived inability to counter the technical superiority of the West, a superiority viewed as having enabled Europe to colonize Asia and other parts of the world. At the height of anti-colonial nationalism, it acted as a salve for having been made a colony of Britain. Now, why did they actually accept this worldview? You should have, if you were in India, you should have know that this is not the case, right? Indians are also materialistic. They are also worried about material aspects of life. So why would you accept this spiritual India versus materialistic Western worldview? Because it helped the Indian ego. You were a colony, you were actually reduced to being a colony of a Western power. So you needed something to actually act as a salve to your own ego, right? So how did they come up with that? So they basically felt that this was good for their ego, that we were spiritual, that's why we became a colony. We are not, because we were not so tied to material aspects, that is why they became technically superior and we remained technically inferior, and that is why we ended up being a colony. So it was something which was a crutch for the ego of people whose like essentially self-respect was crushed by being a colony as such. So that's why they actually even Indian opinion continued to hold on to this view that India is spiritual and India's spiritual as compared to West is this. So the this that we saw, it influenced opinion for 100 years. Why did it do that? Because it was a crutch to the Indian ego, which was crushed by the colonization as such. So if you see what is the entire passage about, it begins by saying that how the way India's past was viewed was very, very influenced by colonial concerns, the Western worldview of other societies. It was heavily influenced that, okay, these people are different and this is how they are different, and they kind of formed this biased worldview of India and India's past. They never really understood India from the eyes of an Indian as such. Now again, what happened was that there was also the fantasy of India that was formed was also in response to the need for a revival of Romanticism. Romanticism was in decline in the Western world. It felt like the Western thought was becoming more disciplined, more rational, and that is why Romanticism kind of sought out European Orientalism as a way of getting a final Romanticism wanted a Oriental Renaissance basically so that it could get that liberation again, where it could escape the discipline and rationality imposed by Neoclassicism. So essentially that was also one of the psychological needs for creating this Orientalist fantasy. Now what also happened is that even though Romanticism went away, this Orientalist fantasy didn't go away. Why didn't it go away? Because people essentially started looking at it as the spiritualism fantasy essentially became ingrained, And even though they didn't look for a Oriental Renaissance as such, what they saw is that, okay, this is a culture that is very, very spiritual and is now in decline. And basically, while the Western world is materialistic, the Indian and Oriental societies are spiritual, and everything that they do is not about the tangible, but it is about the intangible, metaphysical considerations as such. So again, the spiritual fantasy that the West had created about India survived. Not only was this fantasy not only did it survive, but it also influenced Indian opinion. Indians, how they viewed their own past, became influenced by this fantasy of how India was spiritual versus West being materialistic. Now, why did it actually influence Indian opinion? Because even though they knew that India was not only concerned with metaphysical aspects, but also concerned with tangible aspects, this fantasy is like basically a Western view of Indian past as such. Even though that was the case, why did they adopt this particular dichotomy or this particular fantasy of the Western world? They adopted it because it made their ego feel better. Because you would think that, okay, I didn't just lose, I didn't just become a colony because I was technically inferior. I became a colony because I was more spiritual while the West was more materialistic, and that is why I became a colony. That felt better than feeling that, okay, I was just technically inferior. So that was basically a way in which they kind of salvaged their own ego as such, and that is why that particular fantasy continued to hold on, not just in the West, but even among the Indian intelligentsia as such. The author is basically saying that the view of the Indian past that is being like constructed by the West is something which is a product of the West imagination of India and has nothing to do with the actual Indian past and how it actually started, how it progressed, and how it survived. So this Indian fantasy of what India's past is like, why it was created, how it survived, everything is given in this particular passage. So now that we understand what this passage is about, let's take a look at the questions. So let's take a look at the first question. It can be inferred from the passage that to gain a more accurate view of a nation's history and culture, scholars should do all of the following except develop an oppositional framework to grasp cultural differences. This is incorrect, because if you start with an oppositional framework like, okay, the West is materialistic versus this is spiritual, you'll never truly understand the culture as such. If you have an oppositional framework, you'll only kind of amplify the differences, but you will never truly understand the culture. The author will definitely not agree with this, because this is what the colonizers did, and because they did that, they did not have a good understanding of India's past. They did not understand India through the eyes of the Indians. So basically, if you create an oppositional framework, what does it mean? And basically grasp cultural differences. So you say, okay, the West believes in this, the India as opposed to that believes in this. So if you do that, you kind of amplify the differences. You have a particular, you filter out the similarities, you filter out whatever is same between you two cultures, and you basically kind of focus only on the differences, and you have a kind of a convoluted world view of that particular culture. It won't be a true view of the culture. It won't be a genuine view of the culture. It will be a view which is kind of influenced by your own biases, your own way of looking at things. So A would in fact not be how you should, it's not how you should do history. You should not look at a culture with your own lenses and see what is different. That is actually wrong as per the author. So he would not definitely say that. So this can be said to be the answer as such. This is against what the author actually asked us to do. Examine their own beliefs and biases. This is true. The author says that the way you look at a society and a society's past should not be influenced by your own concerns. Like the West was influenced by the colonial concerns, their own belief of what was going on in the Western thought. They believed, okay, neoclassicism has become very rigid in its discipline. So all of that essentially influenced how they looked at India's past. And the author believes that it should not be done. You should look at India's past through the lens of the Indians. You should look at it objectively. You should not look at it with your own concerns and biases and subjective beliefs. So he will agree with this. Read widely in the country's literature. The author says this should be done. The Western colonizers looked only at selected text. If they had looked at the entirety of India's culture, India's literature, they would not have those biases as such. So again, this is something he would agree with. Examine the complex reality of that nation's society. Again, he believes that this is something that the Western powers did wrong, the Western culture did wrong. They kind of adopted a generalized, simplified view of India's society, that India is not, worried about religion and metaphysics and not really worried about tangible concerns in life, which clearly cannot be true. In your day-to-day life, you are actually worried about the tangible aspects, about your property, about your relations, about your family. These are tangible things. You are not worried about the metaphysical things and not worried about religion, right? So, but the Western view does not think that way, right? The Western view of India was that it is very spiritual and everything was like super complex, because that is something that they had their own fantasy about. So, this is something he would agree with. Basically, a nation's society, what motivates a society is a complex thing. You can't have a simplified, generalized view of a society like that. So he will agree with that. A is the only one that he will definitely not agree with. He is actually opposed to that particular view of things, because it brings in your own biases, you view a society from the lens of your society, which the author does not agree with. So A would be the right answer. Let's take a look at the second question. It can be inferred from the passage that the author is not likely to support the view yet, something that he will not agree with. So let's take a look at the options. India's culture has evolved over the centuries. Again, he says that one of the things that he says that one of the mistaken beliefs of the Western generalized view of Indians was that it remained constant for over 3000 years. For example, this interpretation tended to emphasize non-historical aspects of Indian culture. For example, the idea of an unchanging continuity of society and religion over 3000 years. And it was, this basically the author highlights this to say that clearly the Indian culture evolved over the years, but the way the Western thought looked at India, they saw it as a simplified, generalized view that had not changed at all. So the author is clearly saying that the Indian culture, the way of living changed over the 3000 years. But one of the mistaken beliefs that the West had about India was that it had an unchanging culture as such. India's culture was clearly not unchanging. Any society will undergo change, will undergo evolution as such. So the author will agree with this. He is likely to support this, so I can eliminate option A. The Orientalist view of Asia fired the imagination of some Western poets. This is absolutely true. Many of the Romanticists wanted this because they wanted they were feeling suffocated under the discipline and the imposition of rationality that had come with neoclassicism. So they wanted a romantic revival through Oriental Renaissance. So they definitely fired the imagination of some Western poets. So this is true. India became a colony, although it matched the technical knowledge of the West. This is not true. India did not match the technical knowledge of the West. What basically the author is saying, if you look at the option, was that it was a consolation that instead of just the Indian intelligentsia basically were on the back foot, or their ego was hurt from the fact that they could not match the technical superiority of the West, and because of that they felt that if you can't match the technical superiority of the West, you would feel that you would be an inferior culture. But to actually act against that kind of thing, they sought consolation in the fact that they were more spiritual than the West as such. So this is not true that they had the same level of technical knowledge as the West. This is clearly not true, as per the passage itself. So the author will not agree with this. Indian culture acknowledges the material aspects of life. The author clearly says that the Western view was wrong in believing that little attention was given to the more tangible aspects. Attention was definitely given to the tangible aspects, and the view that only they were concerned about metaphysical aspects and religious aspects is the wrong one. They were also concerned about the tangible aspect. So this is also something that he would agree with. C is the only one that he would not agree with. So the correct answer is option C. Now let's take a look at the third question. In the concept of the passage, all of the following statements are true except. So we have to look at the false statement. Indian texts influenced Orientalist scholars. This is true. Basically, they studied languages and the text with selected Indian scholars. Basically, they did read. It's not as if there was no influence from the Indian text. So this is true. So we can eliminate this option. Orientalist scholarship influenced Indians. Again true. Orientalist scholarship essentially produced this view that India is spiritual versus Western materialism, and this was the view that was held by the Indian intelligentsia as given over here. This theme has been more endorsed by the section of Indian opinion during the last 100 years. So this Orientalist scholarship did influence Indians. So B is also true. Indian spiritualism served as a salve for European colonizers. No, this is given over here. It was a consolation to the Indian intelligentsia. It was a salve for the fact that having been made a colony, so it was a salve for the Indians, not for the colonizers. The Indians felt that okay, I was colonized, my country was colonized, but it was because of this particular way that my society is spiritual and it was less worried about of tangible aspects, and that is why it was colonized. The salve of this particular spiritualism was for Indians, not for the European colonizers. So this statement is definitely false. Orientalist understanding of Indian history was linked to colonial concerns. Basically it is given in the first paragraph directly. That is basically it was influenced by, inevitably influenced by colonial concerns and interests, and also because by the prevalent European ideas about history, civilization and the Orient. So this is true, it is given directly in the first paragraph. So only option C is false. Now let's take a look at the fourth paragraph. Which one of the following styles of research is more similar to the Orientalist scholars' method of understanding Indian history and culture? So what did the Orientalist scholars do? They basically looked at Indian history through their own lens, their own biases, their own worldview. They saw only selected texts, but they did not understand the Indian worldview as such. Then they formed a fantasy of India's past, basically a self-serving fantasy of what their psychological needs were. When that fantasy ended, that fantasy essentially kind of preserved in a dichotomy, artificially created dichotomy of the Indian past. So basically they saw a little aspects of India, they imprinted their own beliefs and civilizational beliefs over it, and they held firm to this like simplified, biased version of Indian past. They did not care what the truth or what reality was essentially. They had this particular view based from limited evidence. They formed this fantasy of what India's culture and India's history is like, and they held on to this particular belief system as such. So let us take a look at this. Basically, it's like looking at something with your own lens and forming a picture in your mind and holding on to that picture even though the reality is different. So let's take a look at the options. Studying artifacts excavated at a palace to understand the lifestyle of those who live there. So this is evidence-based recreation. Evidence-based recreation is the opposite of what the Orientalists did. The Orientalists basically looked at confirming their own fantasy as such. They did not look at evidence. If you study evidence and form a actual picture of how people lived, it is realistic. It is the right way to study history. What the Orientalist scholars did was the wrong way to study history. So A is not the correct answer. Reading 18th century accounts by travelers to India to see how they viewed Indian life and culture of the time. Again, this is an acceptable way of reading history. So even though this would not be a complete form of history, it is not a fantasy. It is reading an actual account of travel. It is not forming a fantasy based on half-baked evidence or selected texts. So even though this is not the full picture, it is a valid way of studying a culture. It is looking at what the travelers wrote about how India was at that point of time, how the Indian culture was at that point of time. You have to do this in conjunction with actually talking to Indian people and seeing their worldview as well. But this view by itself is not a bad way of reading or learning about a society. If you take this view and you use your own biases and construct a fantasy, then that is wrong. So B is itself not a wrong way of studying history, Indian history as such. Reading about the life of an early American settlers and later waves of migration to understand the evolution of American culture. This is the right way of reading history. You understand their life, how they led, their worldview through their eyes, and you would understand how the American culture essentially evolved. This is not a imprinting your own biases on somebody else. This is not being done over here. So C is also not the correct answer. Analyzing Hollywood action movies that depict violence and sex to understand contemporary America. Again, basically what is this? You are taking selected part of the culture, you are blowing it out of proportion and you are believing that all of America is like this. And it is similar to what the Orientalists did, right? They must have read a few texts which is like, which were related to metaphysics, and they believe that all of metaphysics, like all of India is very concerned about religion and metaphysics. When it is clearly not. You are concerned about your health, your family and your money as such. But in the minds of the Western, they felt that all decisions were like they would read a few philosophers maybe, and they would think that everybody would talk like the philosophers. Similar to you seeing a Hollywood movie and thinking that okay, there was violence on every street of America. So again, this is basically seeing a part of the culture and blowing up it and making this fantasy about how the whole culture is based on this small part that you have read of it. So D is the correct answer. Basically, you have formed a fake idea of a particular culture by reading or understanding only a part of it. So D is actually the correct answer. It matches the same thing that the Orientalist scholars did. So D would be the right answer.
Every serious CAT aspirant needs a secret weapon for the revision. This is yours, the Crack You CAT Formula PDF. It is not just a list, it's comprehensive and topic-wise guide for every formula you'll ever need to know. We've built it to be only formula sheet you'll ever need for your preparation, and we're giving it away for free. Find it easily. Just go to Google and search Crack You CAT Formula PDF. Download it, master it, and walk into the exam with confidence.